Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. In today's episode, we talk all about setting up a solid foundation for an incredible life together. Things we chat about are discussing expectations for creating lifestyle and wealth, maintaining a healthy relationship even when unpredictable events happen, and building a business and relationship at the same time. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Today we're welcoming Marcus and Ariel. Marcus is a business coach, author, speaker, and top 10% member. Marcus started his entrepreneurial life at the age of 10, negotiating how he should get paid for making takeaway containers at a local chicken shop. Since then, he has built and sold a 7-figure business and continues to be involved in a number of businesses, including Business Couple Success, which he runs alongside his wife, Ariel. Ariel is a business coach, international speaker, author, and top 10% member. From her very first job, she wanted to understand how things work so that she could help make them run better. After collaborating with Marcus on a business, she realized that she had a strong passion for business. Together, they recently sold their business and have launched Business Couple Success, where they coach and train other business couples to find their own wealth, health, and happiness. Together, they host the podcast, The Business Couple's Secret Sauce. Welcome to the show.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great to have you on the show. So just to kick off, can you just tell us a little bit about your relationship? Like how long you've been together? And
About to be 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Quarter of a decade is about to be upon us.
Woohoo!
So over 25 years of working, living, playing, and running businesses together, I'm sure you've got quite a few tips and tricks for us across this conversation. But what I would love to know is there's this theory that people have, multiple core relationships throughout their life. And sometimes that's with different people and sometimes that's with the same person. But it just happens that you're on your third marriage within your one marriage. I'd love to know if that rings true for the two of you.
My feeling is there's definitely different stages of your relationship. There's, and it's obviously not for everyone, but there's pre-kids, there's kids, and I think kids are broken into two stages where the little people that require a massive amount of work, and then the teenager rebellious period.
Or the go in your room and don't come out sort of stage.
Yep. The post-kids, and then there's retirement.
And where are you now?
We're post-kids. So
Post-kids, not quite retirement.
I don't know if I'm going to do retirement.
It's a workaholic.
Yeah.
Workaholic.
I don't think
right
I want to
here.
do it either. I think I'd just like to have the passion projects for forever.
Yeah. If I could be working 3 days a week doing something of some shape or form, I'd be happily doing it for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, that's interesting because that was part of Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week was everyone's like, yeah, and then I'm on a beach for the rest of the time. He's like, no, then you're doing productive stuff and you're learning gear and you're traveling and you're his thing was not to just put your feet up for the other, I don't know, however many hours at the other side of that. It was just more, it allows you to then do what you want to do in your time. So totally on board with that.
Yeah. What was your feeling about stages?
Stages.
Or thoughts?
Yeah, look, I mean, we sort of have a bit of a version of that in the sense that every now and again we check in on whether or not we're intentionally together as opposed to just there by habit. I think a lot of relationships, you get together and have kids and you're doing all that and you have the home and then you're just together because you're together, and you just don't think about breaking up, which is okay in a way. But we always want to sort of check in that we actually really want to be here like you are in the first place, Yeah, so, and, sometimes it's a tricky conversation because it's sort of like you're digging into whether or not, you're going to stay together or not, I guess, and if you sort of look into it, then you're opening the idea that it might not still be a thing, whereas sometimes letting sleeping dogs lie is just easier for people. But we just always want to be, passionately and positively and intentionally together. Yeah, so we do that
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. It doesn't mean we spend every day that way.
No,
But,
gosh, no.
you know,
Like
or
maybe
week or month
no.
sometimes. But
Like
yeah,
we might
it just
only do
is.
it annually.
So, yeah.
I think it comes about when we're when there's stresses going on and
And those stages.
we're not really incongruent. Yeah, like we wouldn't have done it when we had little kids. I don't think.
Particularly the last big one for us was when we sold the business.
Mm.
You know, because that was all of a sudden something that was a 7-day a week, 60-hour machine meant that it wasn't there anymore. So that certainly changed things up, and it's like, okay, well, what's going on with this?
And then also, what's next? What are we going to do with our time and our lives and our what's our next act? What's the next decade about? So it was a whole big reset time, and whenever you do that, that's always, you know, challenging, like, because you're sort of trying to go, well, where are we at and where do we want to be, and are we, you know, are we in alignment with that, and just pressures, I guess, stress. So.
Well, I know that it kind of rings true for Nathan and I. Like, we've been together half as long as the two of you. I think we're in like year 12 or 13, somewhere around there. And, you know, and we've had like really distinct stages of our relationship, and we're still pre-kids. But there's definitely been like books or chapters where it was, we're quite young and we were both still studying, and then living through a share house kind of life with just partying on weeknights and chaos, you know, right through to having our first jobs together and entering the workforce as, you know, your first real adult job, and then, you know, getting engaged and getting married in those first few years of our
bit of the honeymoon period.
Marriage, and then moving into state, and then that felt like a brand new chapter again. And, you know, and then even just launching the podcast and the business together, that's felt like a totally new chapter and season of our relationship.
Yeah,
it's like layers and layers and layers, really, isn't it?
Yeah. For us, we didn't end up sort of having that honeymoon period, I guess, that you guys sort of would have deemed, because we got together a little bit later in life as such. Ariel already had a child when we got together, and our son was born 9 months to the day we first touched hands.
Think about that.
Yeah. He did come.
That's a good story.
Yeah, he did come 6 weeks early.
That's a very insightful piece of information to share, isn't it?
So in that first year, we had a child together,
moved in together,
and started a business.
Yeah.
What a whirlwind.
Yeah, it was all in.
Yeah.
I guess in those 25 years that you have been together, I'm sure that you've learnt a few little tips and tricks along the way to kind of keep your relationship together and keep your relationship as a conscious relationship as well. And you're saying you're having check-ins. So, like, can you share some of those things that you do to keep your relationship fueled up?
I think primarily we value what we have, like, and we are aware that it's something that, we both really value. Like, it's a rare thing. And that's just sort of the initial connectedness. But then the idea that you need to give attention and time and food, and you need to nurture relationships, like you need to nurture anything you want to develop and grow. We respect each other and we just genuinely enjoy each other. But I think probably communication, everyone says that, and I always think it's a bit of a cop-out, because it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what does that look like, if you know what I mean, in terms of a hack? I think for us, communication-wise, if we get to sort of one of those periods where everything's a bit incongruent, we're arguing a bit or testy, and, we're sort of stressing and all the rest of it, we end up sort of going, oh, okay, right, let's put all this on the table and let's properly dig into this. But instead of, nitpicking about little bits and pieces, it's more about trying to get to what is at the base of it, if you know what I mean. So
what's really going on?
Yeah. Like, I mean, a good example I always think is, like someone putting the toilet seat down, like the girl saying, can you put the toilet seat down when you finish? We've never had that problem. Marcus is a man of God, but people argue over the toilet seat, and it's like, it's not the toilet seat. It's because, I don't like it, and I've asked you, and it'd be nice if you could do it.
It's always deeper.
Yeah, it's
always much deeper.
It's about care and trying to make your partner happy. And,
care and respect.
Yeah.
Those micro acts of courtesy, they build up, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what are some for you, do you think?
Probably thinking about the day-to-day processes and just reminding myself that the person that I'm with is choosing to be with me. So get out of that head of being, well, I'm just everything, and it's her right. It's her right to. Well, it's like, you know what I mean. Like what I'm trying to sort of say, it's that idea that it's sort of, we often go, well, I'm bigger and better, and I'm this or I'm that. And I think that can be male or female. I don't think I'm not trying to sort of say it's one way or the other, but it's that idea you're in your own head. So your own ego. Ego is the word I was after, and it's going, well, hang on, someone's choosing to spend their time with me. So respect their ego, respect them, because of it.
So you kind of mentioned that you had a pretty whirlwind early stage of your relationship. If you could go back, or, if you were chatting to somebody who was in that early stage, what would be some of the advice? What are the foundational skills or elements of a relationship that you would encourage others to work on?
Probably something that we didn't have the opportunity for, and probably didn't have the finances for, were more us time. When you jump in with little children, you don't have us time. Like, you struggle for us time. It happens late at night, and then you're running a business or you're doing other things. From our point of view, it just meant that genuine time where you actually turn off all devices, turn off the TV, and you actually sit and talk.
Or go for a walk, holding hands. Like making sure you don't get too distracted with life and jobs and businesses and study and everything you're doing, to actually just sort of go, right, we're just going to spend an hour or two just us. Being just us, loving us.
Yeah.
I think we can take that sort of stuff for granted, that we have access to our partner like on tap. And that they're always there, so you could always do that. I found this, like, particularly during COVID, when the gyms closed and all of a sudden I was working out at home. It was like, oh, I can do that anytime, so therefore I do it no time. Like, whereas if I had a specific class that I had to turn up and go to, I would have no troubles to make that time and make that commitment. And I think that proximity to your partner can have that impact, where it's like you don't necessarily treat their time as a resource that is precious, which it is.
Yeah. And now, like, the first sort of 3 or 4 years of our business, I was on the road all the time. But when we moved from that business into the next one, which was the pet resort, we were actually in each other's space. Like, we were 24/7 together.
That brings its own challenges. But in terms of earlier on, I think what we didn't do it, but I would give this advice to people, is to make sure that your goals and dreams and visions and expectations of it are in alignment, because sometimes you can have two people that are just off in their own vision and version of what it is, and they're usually reasonably aligned, because otherwise you wouldn't be together, unless it's purely physical attraction, which I'm down. But
which doesn't last long.
You might be having like a vision of the fact that you're going to be spending every Saturday and Sunday together now that you're moving in together and it's gone to the next thing. And whereas the other person might be going, oh no, I'm always going to have sports Sunday with my friends. Like that's, that's my vision. I'm always going to be, but Saturday we're going to be doing amazingly romantic things every Saturday in my life. Do you know what I mean? And it's just the fact that they haven't really, sort of worked out what it, in a way, just to make sure they're both sort of got the same expectation of it, because otherwise you get there and then it's like, well, wait on, I was expecting this and you're not doing this. And it sounds bleeding obvious, right, that you'd sort of check that you have similar expectations of what it's going to look like, but you tend not to. You tend to just wander into it thinking they're thinking the same as you, usually.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think, and this is something that Nathan and I do quite regularly with that expectation map, and having those conversations like, well, what would a perfect year look like? Like, a week is too granular, but like if you zoom out and go, okay, well, in a year, we want to have, a handful of weekends away together. We would like to take, one holiday or one, proper trip, unplug, disconnect kind of thing. And then it's like, well, I also want to have, time for me and my girlfriends a couple of weekends in a year. Nathan wants that for him and his mates a couple of times a year. And then breaking it down and going, well, are those expectations in alignment? Like, do we feel like is it reasonable? Is it attainable? Is it something that we can actively work towards? We don't live in the same state as our family. How many interstate trips are we willing to make, committed to make? What's your expectation? What's my expectation? What are we going to say no to? But that conversation is ongoing, isn't it? Like, your expectations for for life and how you spend your time and your energy is like you said, Ari, it's like, it sounds obvious, but if you don't have have those conversations, it can create a really big gap and a really big disconnect in like, well, I thought we were going here and, you thought we were going there. And then all of a sudden, oh, no.
And even if you're 2 degrees off course, like if you keep going off course, you end up getting further and further apart.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's also just logistical things like, are you going to pool your money or are you going to stay money solo? Or do you know what I mean? And then you could just have 2 people that just are really fully assuming it's going to look a certain way from their life experience or their vision or something. Do you know what I mean? And there's just a few things along those lines too. Like what's that going? Oh, and money. Like, are we going to be saving for stuff, or are we just going to be having fun money for a year? Or do you know what I mean? And it's otherwise you sort of get there and suddenly it's like, no, you can't spend that money on ski gear or book that holiday because that's expensive because we're saving for a house or something. It's like, it's all okay. It's just the fact that it's not in alignment. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, wait on, can we do both? Or, But oftentimes you just sort of blunder lovingly into these things and you've got your own vision. So,
It also comes down to, I think, how early on in the piece that you're having those conversations. You know what I mean? Are you, is it after a month? Is it after 6 months? Is it after 2 years? Is like, at what point do you go, the relationship is, hey, we're having fun, we're dating, we're having a good time, and I really like you, to, well, this is going to become a little bit more serious. What's your plans? Do you want kids? Don't you want kids?
Yeah. I think I'm a big fan of a framework. I love a framework, framework or guesswork, that's your choices. But it's not like you go to the mechanic and you get your car serviced and they stick the little sticker in the top of the corner and you know when you need to get it serviced again. That doesn't happen for your relationship. Like, you can sit down and have that conversation. You're like, okay, well, when do we do this again? Like,
so
and how many kilometers do we have to travel before this is a problem again, or before there's something that we can, preemptively, take care of. It's kind of a funny thing. And, different relationships cover different kilometers at a very different rate. So to have those conversations can feel really funny. It's like, when, where, how, and how frequently.
I mean, I like the idea of somewhere between 6 to 12 months. Although 6 months sounds like a long time. It's still, at the end of the day, it's at least, it's twice a year. You're just checking in twice a year and you're sitting down together and going, how's the last 6 months been? What would you like for the next 6 months? Particularly in the earlier years, as you get on and you've been together a lot more, you can then pull it out longer, because there's not quite the demand.
It means it all just doesn't bottle up either. That idea that you bottle things up that are bugging you about someone or whatever, and all it really required was a conversation like months earlier, so they didn't all just accumulate, So that would be a one too. Like, don't let things build up. Just if something's bugging you, I mean, pick your timing. Like, if the person's not in the mood for it, don't bring it up. Bring it up the next day or something. But like if things just, don't let things just keep adding up, because then it's just gotten to a whole emotional level that it didn't need to get to.
Yeah. I have this theory that at some point something's going to happen where you couldn't have seen it coming, whether it's, a bad financial decision, someone in your family getting really unwell, or a child that you have difficulty handling, or, someone being made redundant or fired, or any of those kind of things. Or it could be a family member that, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we really need to support this person and take care. Like, if your relationship's not at a healthy and thriving place day to day, when that big thing happens, how are you going to get through it?
I love this. An asteroid will hit you at some point. It's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah.
Have your bunker ready.
It's true.
Yeah, it's definitely sage advice. I mean, the stronger it is at that point, the more likely you are to be able to sort of weather the storm of it.
Yeah.
So,
and also if you've had times along the way where you have sat down and discussed things, or discussed the more of those little niggling things, then you're more prepared for when the asteroid does hit. Whereas if you have just churned along and not had any conversation about any of that stuff, the asteroid's just, it's almost not coming back out.
Yeah.
A lot of relationships don't make it, and not because they were fatally flawed, but just because just the right interventions and check-ins and openness and tips and tricks and things weren't given to it, really, which is sadder, really, than if something is just fatally flawed, because then it's like, because we're not fans of staying together because you got married or because that's what you started doing, like that's the whole idea of checking in as well, is like that, particularly in the past, there was that idea that once you were together, is it, no divorce, no anything, you're stuck together for the benefit of the kids. And I just think, it just created really miserable environments for everyone. So my personal opinion is, if it's really not able to be worked out, you obviously put a lot of energy and effort into that before you get to that decision.
It's not a small decision. If at what point you decide to make that decision, it's not a small one, but it has to be a real one.
Yeah, and that's also been a part of us having a healthy, happy relationship, is actually not hanging on to it in a way that's like it's done, it's forever. Like it's like, well, that's the plan. That's plan A, don't get me wrong.
Plan A is to be living in France above a patissiere, a chocolate shop and a bakery with dumb waiters going to each one. And we can just, at the age of 85, and the treats just arrive.
Yeah, 100%. I don't care how much butter I eat at that point. I'm like, 85, I'm good.
Bring it on.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
So I this is probably a little bit cheeky. I do know that at one point in your relationship, you did have a bit of an asteroid, a surprise hit your relationship around your health, Marcus. Are you up for sharing a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, no, that's sort of fine. I mean, as you sort of said, the asteroid did come, and when it came in the form of multiple sclerosis. It also probably led into my workaholic tendencies, which didn't help as well. In the early periods, it was probably because it wasn't really heavily affected in my day-to-day life. I didn't think about it as much, if that makes sense, although I knew the outcome, because I actually knew a few people who had MS, and I knew where that ends, and it ends in wheelchairs. It ends in not a pretty place for most people. There's very few people that it doesn't end that way. So once I was first diagnosed and I realised and I found out that's what it was, I basically had said to Ariel, I sort of said, you need to leave. We need to separate because I'm going to be a burden. There's no ifs, there's no buts. And we weren't even married at this point, right? So we were together 16 and a half years before we got married. We had businesses.
But that was really
kids,
just for the party and the celebration. It wasn't like, gee, look, I can exit, stage right because I haven't signed on the dotted line yet.
Bugging the business or the house or the kids or, that sort of stuff. But,
I've been true to Marcus's personality, which is to care more about everyone else around him than himself, that his first concern was how it was going to impact on everyone else, not on himself.
So I wanted to distance myself from the people that I loved, because I didn't want to have to be a burden on them. The idea of being a burden on your partner or a burden on your kids is, it's pretty soul destroying, because that there's a larger percentage that it's going to happen.
Yeah. So how did you work through that process then, I guess, to staying together and to choosing to stay together?
Obviously, I was not going anywhere. That wasn't even... Like it was such a
you're sitting here next to each other, so happy ending.
It was such a mental thing. Like, I mean, I think if you're in a relationship where you look for the exit door whenever someone, if someone gets a health hiccup, because it's more than a hiccup, but like even anything, I'm just like, well, I don't think that was a solid relationship, really. Like, I mean, my whole thing was like, well, let's just fight. Let's just, what's this look like? Like, I'm not a combative person, but like if something comes at you and, rocks your world or your family's world, then you just sort of, you just bunker in and just lean into it and fight for it. You know what I mean? So our whole thing was just what it is like and how to work. Well, just how to work through it. Like, I mean, part of my thing with Marcus is whenever he suggests these mental things, like I think you should leave me because of that or something, I'm always like, well, if this were reversed and it was me that just got the diagnosis with MS, would you be saying, well, yeah, I'm going to check out because I don't know, sign up for that, you know? And it's like, he goes, of course I wouldn't. It's like, well, it's the same, you know, like it's just, you need to see it from my perspective, which is, you know, we're a team, like team us, and, you know, nothing's changed except, you know, an outside force of something that's negative, I guess. But like, but us, like team us, hasn't changed. There hasn't been something in that that's altered at all, really.
No, I mean, it's probably, as I said, in the early period, it was less of an issue, you know, because it didn't impact upon me physically or mentally and stuff like that. But as time went on, it did, you know, and that's when it became real. It probably has impacted me in my thinking more than, say, Ariel, because she's just going, no, I'm here and I'm working and that's what we're doing. Whereas I'm going, yeah, but I can't, you know, I can't do a day. I can't do an 8-hour day, or I can't do whatever it is. I'm just physically or not mentally able to, or we can't choose to have a holiday
where
doing
we go hiking Machu Picchu or something.
Yeah.
But even with that, we focus on what we can do. So, yes, there's definitely things off the table now because Marcus has MS.
Well, there's off the tables for the two of us.
Yeah.
So if Ariel chooses to, because it's such a strong driver for her to want to go and do those things, she has to know that she's doing it by herself. She can do it with friends and things like that. It's an experience or an adventure that I can't be a part of.
And there'd be a little bit of guilt with that from my end because I would know that he would like to be there doing it. Do you know what I mean? So I would do it with his blessing, with friends or myself or whatever. But, you know, that's just a sad aspect of it, really. But, you know, it's not peaches and cream, actually. That's probably some good advice for people too. Like, it just doesn't sort of, you know, cruise along in honeymoon mode for the next 50 years of your lives together. Like, there's going to be stuff that happens.
Yeah, it's the vulnerability. I'd say it's the vulnerability and respect and the communication. Again, it comes back to those sort of things that you just, you know, when I'm in a bundle on the ground crying, then you got to talk about it. You know, you got to talk about why I'm in that space for those reasons, you know, and why I feel it. And then as an individual, the person that does have the disability or does have the asteroid or is the asteroid, depending on how you want to put it, they have to learn to take but not be selfish.
That's a really, really poignant piece, isn't it? Learning to ask for what you need and some of what you want, not necessarily the other way around.
Yeah.
And accept people's love and help because they're getting benefit from sharing in that sense.
But also, then not to just be totally selfish about it and go, well, I can't do that anymore, so you're just going to have to do it for me.
Actually, a big part of this too from my end is we work hard for MS not to define Marcus, you know, because sometimes when you meet, I don't know, like well, this would be a good example where people, you know, catch up with Marcus, haven't seen him and go, how's your MS? And it's like, it's just sort of like the central theme in their mind now. And it's like, that's just one part of this, you know, and it's not even really a defining part. So there's people's genuine care. And then there's also, well, you don't need to ask every time you catch up. You know what I mean? It's there's 20 other things you could ask about. And that's just, I guess that's disability in general. You know what I mean? Like just treating people like just another human being, irrespective of what's going on.
Yeah, and even if it is a conversation that you wish to have with them at some point, it doesn't have to be the first conversation you have.
Yeah.
You know, particularly if you haven't seen them in a long time.
And one other big thing that happened with Marcus is a workaholic, as I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. Like, I'm hard on myself and I have perfection issues, but I'm not a workaholic. I love sleep and I'm quite lazy in other fronts. But Marcus was and is, and I think will die a workaholic. And it was very central to his sense of self. Like, he was a hard worker and he always had lots of money because he was doing 3 jobs and it made him feel fulfilled and he was needed in these 3 places and, you know, all this sort of stuff, like really central. So when he wasn't able to work those hours anymore, he sort of lost like his compass on himself, if you'd want to put it that way, and is probably still building that back up. Like, it was so central to his sense of self. So, and, you know, and as a partner, you're involved in your other person's story. Do you know what I mean? Like, you try to hold your own story and your together story, but you do get caught up in your partner's happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, and try to help them or just be aware of it. So,
and trying to encourage Ariel to have her own life outside of me as much as possible, where possible.
And I'm sure that goes the other way, that she wants you to have parts of your life that are yours too.
Oh, yes. Oh, and also on that front, I had not wanting to, because that's why I want to compete, doesn't it? I was very unwell with anxiety for a little while, a year or two, and I still have, like, it just is at a moderate level now. But I was very, very, very unwell when it all fell apart, and Marcus really sort of ran everything, and I just did nothing for a year. Like, and this is when we were running a business with lots of staff and expectations and children and everything. And then early on in our relationship, I had pneumonia. And again, he was a superhero running everything to make sure I could just be sick in bed recuperating. So we've definitely felt it. Like, I've definitely felt it the other direction twice, like in two big events, I guess, so it's not like I'm sort of, selfless Joan over here, like it tends to cycle round in relationships, where, and I have bad days where Marcus is all cheering me up and hugging me, and, where I'm just not, confident or whatever it happens to be. And so, so although the MS is a big sort of happening there, it's still a cyclic thing in terms of us being there for each other.
But I think that is the real beauty of a solid relationship, though, is that it is that ebb and flow of someone taking the lead, or someone, I guess, requiring that support in different areas and different times of your life. And it's that ability to be able to know when you need to step up and take the lead, or know when you actually need to accept help from your partner as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Nath, because it's twofold. It's like knowing when you need to step up and take the lead from your partner, but also knowing when you need to give up the reins and go, it's okay for me to accept this help and this support, and for the other person to take the lead. Like, there's two roles that you need to get good at both, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I just want to touch back on something which you were talking about a little bit earlier, being in business together. And you mentioned that it's not always easy and that there is quite a few complications that can come along with that. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, in terms of how to do that well, I was thinking about it when we were touching on the congruent, the visions that people have of what it's going to look like. So if a couple's thinking about going into business together and, say, running a cafe, again, like saying, well, what does this look like in a year or 5 years or 10 years? Not just wow, we're going to be like, you're going to be the barista and in the kitchen, and it's going to be amazing. But actually going, well, what's this look like? Because one person might be going, we're going to do this for 5 years, and then we're going to go somewhere else and do something else. The other person might be going, no, this is it. I want to be here forever. Like, I love this. I don't want to be anywhere else. And it's like, okay, well, let's just get clear, and also clear on who's going to be doing on what jobs, sort of, not super specifically. But again, it's just more that idea of, what are we going into this with our vision, fantasy, dream thing, so that we're actually on the same page on that.
Yeah. So you've joined us on a podcast called the Date Forever podcast.
Yes.
I would love to, we talked a little bit about what the two of you do to keep your relationship sort of fueled up and in a really great place. But I'd love to know, what do you both do individually to keep dating yourselves?
For me, I try to make sure that the people in my life are positive and just positive people, so obviously sometimes with family it's, you don't get to choose so much, or neighbours or something, but the people I choose to have in my life are positive. Other things I do is listen to podcasts and books and biographies and watch documentaries and things that
we do a chunk
inspire.
Of that together, which is a bit hard. Oh, you read by yourself.
Like I'll read a biography on something that's really inspiring to me and just makes me feel like, people are good in this world, or I'm passionate about that. So probably that.
Yeah, and I mean, part of the reason we probably have done less of this than perhaps we should have, or that maybe for some people it's important, is we actually genuinely really enjoy each other's company. So the idea of going, well, I'm going to go and do this by myself, although we like having our individual space to some degree, we just love doing stuff together. We love the adventures together. So we want to travel together. We want to do these things together. So that can become a little bit sort of tricky sometimes, because it's like you're going, well, hey, I'm going to go and look at this art gallery, and I would like to necessarily go, but I also go, well, I know that Ariel's going to get more enjoyment out of it by going by herself.
Yeah.
So sometimes you hold back a little bit and go, no, you go and enjoy that. You go and spend the time doing that. So yeah.
And another factor too with that too is that there was points in time where we didn't get very much free time at all. So if you only got like one night a month, it's like, I'm not going to go to jewelry classes. We're going to go fine dining.
We're going to go do something together. Yeah.
So there's more time now. So it's probably more of an issue now. But the other one thing I do...
Yeah, we're thinking about it more now.
Yeah, the other one thing I do is self-talk. Like, just be kind, like, just school myself to be kinder to myself. Do you know what I mean? That I'm just a human being trying to do my best, and you know what I mean? Like, I put a lot of pressure on myself. So my self-talk is just to be kinder to myself and stop, and not comparing myself to other people, or just to be kinder to myself. That's a work in progress.
I think that's a lifelong game, isn't it?
Yes.
That self-talk and how we treat ourselves and the dialogue that we have with ourselves. Like, I don't think there's an off switch. I haven't found it.
No, if you do, let me know.
Yeah. Hey, so we kind of touched on a few of our core values that we hold at Fuel Collective. So one is to date forever. Another is to love life and be really intentional about the life that you're living. And the third one is to be the change. And that's really about taking accountability for what you have influence over in your own life, but also the change that you want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us today, we've given a year's worth of seeds to help a family grow some nourishing food in Malawi. So basically Beautiful. They can sustain their own livelihood. So I want to say thank you so much for making that possible.
Oh, it's very nice. Yeah, it's lovely of you to be doing that. So that's great.
So if our listeners want to learn a little bit more about you or want to connect, how should they do that?
Probably the easiest is through the website, which is businesscouplessuccess.com. Shoot us an email, go to our Facebook page, again, Business Couples Success. And And
you'll find us both on LinkedIn as well, just by our name.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.